Hi everyone, my name is Allison and I worked on Project Storm this summer under mentorship of Evie and Dane. Project Storm, or climate resilience through digital tools. Presentation overview, you guys already know. So bottom line up front, my basic goals were to help mentors Dane and Daisy kickstart community energy education and engagement for Project Storm by understanding its core concepts and organizing data sets. And I also evaluated an educational game development pathway to support Storm. So some context. What is Project Storm? This is actually an acronym. It's kind of a mouthful, but it stands for Data-Driven Approaches for Secure Electric Grids in Communities Disproportionately Impacted by Climate Change. I did not come up with this, but it's essentially a multi-year project working in partnership with Puerto Rico, Maine, and South Dakota. And something in common with all these communities is they've been impacted by extreme climate events. And how to solve this is to increase resilience of electric grids using a digital twin. And for ACEP specifically, we are focusing on Galena for the more recent parts. And also educational development in Galena has to be included with that. Some research project goals. I will evaluate and document data at ACEP relevant to digital twin development. And this was done using Obsidian, which is a really cool software if you have a bunch of ideas and want to organize them into one area. It's kind of like a Wikipedia, essentially, and later translate that into Google Sheets. I will develop a simplified version of the electric grid system in Galena. And then that was done using Excalidraw, which is also a really cool software if you want to dumb down really complicated concepts. And then also prototype and develop an energy game for education development. And this is done using Godot. So the bigger picture, understand the concept of storm within ACEP. So since this project is relatively new, we were just trying to understand what has to be done. And then also evaluate a game engine and develop recommendations for a base game structure as an educational resource. And this can later be used on as a reference for digital twin. Some primary activities that I did this summer was explore and document. And so I explored connections, talking to different stakeholders, and basically just introducing the idea of Storm to different partners and what it is and what they can do and work with ACEP. And also document digital twin data needs. So this was looking at different data sets within ACEP and outside of ACEP and kind of help feed it into what's needed for the digital twin. And also simplify energy concepts into digestible pieces. This is important for the game that I'm building. And that also goes into learning an entire new game engine. I've never done any game development before, so that was a big task to tackle on. And that included transferring energy ideas to the game engine itself, and then prototyping the design and game flow. So the first step, I'm going to be talking about the game now. And how did I do that? I was given total creative freedom, which can be a good and a bad thing. I basically gathered a lot of maps, energy, ideas, and talked to a lot of different experts about this and see what can I capture about Galena specifically and the energy grid system, and dumb it down to a very simple idea that I can translate into a game. And as you can see in the top right corner, I settled with going with a very simplified version of a single line diagram. And I'll be going with that. As I got that idea, now I have to move that into a game. And using Godot, I had to figure out, okay, what functions are already built into the game engine that I can use to translate this single line diagram. And there's something called a graph node, which is really cool. You're able to gather elements and assign characteristics to these elements and connect them together. So I figured this would be a really cool way to show what a microgrid system is like. And then I had to translate that to a user interface. And this is where I had a little fun with artwork and playing with different elements. Now for the game engine itself, there's two main parts that I learned there's the actual platform. So this is where I designed all of the levels and elements of the microgrid and how I wanted it to look like. But underneath that, there's a lot of code, and you have to assign what happens within the level, what happens when I click this button. And so the game structure and code of Godot is a object-oriented programming based engine. And this means it's reusable, instantiable, and inheritable. So when you're making a game, you don't want to code something and have to make something for a player and make the same code for it over and over again. You want to reuse the same code, right? So that's what it let me do. I was able to create different levels just by having a main scene and duplicating that and just editing it a little bit for each level. Now, I'm going to do a little live demo. And I already have it, but cool. So I'll be going through two of the levels that I designed for this game. This is also a pixel art based game because I also love that kind of design, but some of the features that I implemented it with a dialog box system. So for educational resources, it's important to keep audiences engaged. And by doing this, it helps you keep on being involved. So for the first levels, it's a lot about teaching the audience what the elements of the microgrid is. See, it's just explaining what a power plant and a load is. And then here we go, we passed. I'm going to skip ahead to level 4 because it incorporates a lot more of the components of the game that I worked on. So it keeps on explaining and gives instructions for the user in case it's not super intuitive, but I created it so that you can move around different elements, and then you can also add loads to there. So that's what I was talking about, having the code be reusable. You don't want to recode something for each part. And then you can also connect different parts. Grid. And let's hit play and see what happens. There's a little function there that pops up, and the script that shows it explains in case this level talks about what a balanced grid means, and I'm hoping that as the levels progress, it will talk about how do you offset diesel, how do you incorporate use renewable resources, and we passed again. All right. So what are the lessons that I learned? I played a lot with this game engine over the summer, and I came up with some pros and cons in case anyone is interested in using it as a future educational resource. So some pros, it is a open source software and it's completely free. Anyone can download it and learn it. The scripting language, GDScript, is very similar to Python. So if you already have experience with Python, it's very easy to switch over. There's nothing complicated like C and C++, although there is a version of that available. Documentation, I know a lot of programmers don't necessarily like looking at documentation all the time, but the one for Godot actually provides very lengthy explanations and guidance. And then there's a very healthy global open source community. So whenever I ran into any problems, I was able to look on the Godot forums and get any of my questions answered. Some cons, online tutorials, although there are many, they were often taught using older versions of Godot. So I was trying to use a recent version, but I couldn't find any tutorials. So if I want to implement a certain function, it was really hard to. And then updates of Godot do drastically change functions and interface. So it's kind of the downside of having a really good community is that they keep on updating the system. And so it's hard to keep up and figure out what's going on. And the structure itself can be complicated if you don't have any previous gaming development experience, but I was able to consult Will a lot. He helped me a lot with the debugging process. And then overall, some challenges. I just didn't have any previous experience with game development. but it was a really good learning experience. And then to someone continue my work, I would just stay out, source more knowledge, talk with energy experts. And then something I would have wanted to do was just talk to more people about how they built their simulation software and just how you can best capture that in a simple game. And then conclusion, some shortcomings that I had to tackle every aspect of the game. So from programming to UI, and then I just had to spread myself in a lot of parts of it. And I wish I could focus more on the energy microgrid simulation part of it, but there were times where I was just focusing on how do I make this button look like I want it to, and that would be my work for the day. And I just had a short time span overall to learn an entire game engine. Some successes though, I learned a lot about energy systems and translating it to a programming language. I also learned the process of game development and how to use Godot. I facilitated connections with Storm stakeholders, and then I also very much enjoy the interdisciplinary aspect of it, from talking about data formats to microgrids to game development. That was a very fun process. Questions?
Kudos on a live demo that worked.
Thank you.
And also kudos on getting it onto a website. That's on the itch, right?
Yeah,
I had no clue. So the last time I got to see the thing was when she was still clicking, trying to make it fun and stuff like that. So to see that jump from what I saw last to see it posted on as a live demo on a website that anybody else here could go click on without having to install anything. That's awesome. That is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Also kudos on having your first bullet be trying to explain Storm to other people.
Yeah, when I saw that.
You had the hardest task, I think, than anybody else.
There's a lot to come into.
We have a question online. Go ahead, Anchorage office.
Oh, thanks. Wait, I had two questions. Where can you remind us where to go if we want to check out your game? Because it's really cool and we all want to look at it again. And then the other one was you said you facilitated connections between stakeholders. Did you get to work with community members? Like who are some of the stakeholders in this project? Can you elaborate on that a little, please?
Yeah, those are great questions. For the game itself, the website that I use isn't public yet, but I can definitely put it up somewhere for people to access. And then in terms of stakeholders, we talked to a lot of different partners. One of the partners that Storm is working with is Cartorium. So it's a startup that is working on the digital twin aspect of this project. So we got to talk to them and see where they're at and what they need in terms of their data.
Cool, thank you. That was a great talk.
Thank you. All right, thank you.